Awesome. So I will now be starting. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We are hosting a panel with three lovely recent grads. And this is in partnership with HCDSA Design Buddies and UX Go. So before we start, I will talk a little bit about UX Go and Design Buddies. So UX Go is a career development platform that offers courses, resources, and coaching to help people advance in their UX careers. So whether you want to learn more about how to build a portfolio or how to get more interviews, UX Go is the resource for you. And then Design Buddies is a community for designers and people interested in design to connect, share resources, and improve their careers. And I believe that there's a Discord and you can also always check out their website if you want to join. Okay, so getting into the panelists, we are joined today by Ashley, Mark, and Jackie. So they can go ahead and introduce themselves. Ashley, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm excited to be back. I was a part of UX at UW for 3 years, and I recently just graduated this last spring. And now I work as a UX designer at Capital One, and I'm located in Virginia. And so, yeah, I've been working for around 3 months now, so excited to share some more experiences there. Oh, and I graduated from HCDE.
Hey everyone, I'm Mark. I'm a product designer at Velocity, and I'm based in New York. And I also was a part of UX UW last year, and last year I also graduated from HCDE. And so I'm looking forward to being back and answering any questions.
And hello, everyone. I feel so old right now because I graduated from Info in 2022. And now I'm working as a UX designer at Amazon, working in Alexa specifically. So, yeah, happy to answer any questions too. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome. So now into the panel questions. So our first question is, what is your first job or internship in UX design and how did you land it? We can start off with Ashley.
Yeah, my first job or internship in UX design was actually at DSW, so like designer shoe warehouse. So it was a totally different industry than what I'm currently working in. And that was the summer after my sophomore year. So actually at this time, like it was before like the economy was really bad, I will say. So I feel like it was a little bit easier to break in with little to no experience. But getting started on my portfolio, I think was what set me ahead from like finding a job, like I guess amongst other of my peers who maybe started a little bit later, like in the spring. I think timing is everything. Like your portfolio like will never be like finished, but like I just forced myself like a time box to finish it, even if I was still improving it or wasn't satisfied in the fall. And then I just mass applied like fall through winter. I was pretty lucky. I would say like it's definitely not common to like find a like internship, I guess, when you're like more in the undergrad stages. But it's definitely a numbers game. So if you are like in the stage where you're like, I want to apply, but I don't have a portfolio that's like quite done, or I don't feel satisfied with it, I would say just keep applying, even if you're continuously improving on it, because putting your application in is better than nothing. So definitely like continuously just try to send it out. And yeah, like I that was the job I landed with no referrals or anything. And that was like another thing that I learned was like I think referrals are great and for certain companies you definitely want to have that if you can, but like don't get too stuck on it or like hung up on like trying to chase after this referral if it's gonna stall you in the job a lot because I think timing is really important. So just like catching it early in the cycle is good.
Awesome, thank you. Mark, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so my first like job or internship in UX design was at a like a social media startup. And the way I got that, it was kind of similar to Ashley where it was right after my sophomore year. So I didn't obviously have any like real work experience and I hadn't taken many classes where I could build up a portfolio. And so what I did was the winter break of that year, I kind of made it a goal of mine to like to do some like personal projects so I could at least have some work to show. And so I had this like one kind of app idea that I kind of built out in Figma just to kind of showcase my skills. And at the time, I was working like a retail job, and so I kind of made a little project based on like a product we were using at that job, and I would like interview some of my other like coworkers to do some like user research. And so I kind of was able to create some projects which helped me showcase my skill set. And so when it came around to like applying, I honestly wasn't having much luck. And then just on Handshake, I found a job and I was like, okay, you know what? This is like the last job I'll apply to. If it works, great. But if not, I'll just like move on and try and get an internship next year. But it ended up working out. I got the job and I actually ended up moving across the country to work for this company, which is that was alone was a very cool experience. But since this was a startup, I was able to do many different things and wear many different hats. And I feel like that allowed me to accomplish a lot during that summer. And I was able to, have a lot more work I could showcase or I could use to showcase my skills. And that ended up helping me secure my next internship. And so it was kind of a cool process where I started off just, trying, really doing things on my own, but it helped me gain work experience that helped me progress moving forward. So, yeah.
Great. And then Jackie. Also, by the way, if you guys aren't muted, we'd love for you guys to mute. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. All right, go ahead, Jackie.
Yeah, so echoing what Ashley and Mark has already said, I agree to those points. And for me, myself, my first job or first internship in UX was actually at a UW funded startup. So how I got it was through, yeah, I don't know if you guys still use Handshake, but it was actually like through UW Handshake where you just join career fairs and you just start networking or connecting with those founders or people or the recruiters simply. So it's just like simply through networking, you just start talking. And then how I landed this startup was there was this founder that was oh, sorry, I need to talk. I should tell you guys what the internship was. Basically, it was like an air purifier company. Because it was during COVID times, and my I also wore a lot of hats, so I had to do some IoT things, interacting with physical designing for physical products as well as the app interface too. So I was wearing a lot of hats, but how I landed it was through by just showing up, attending career fairs and then networking with people and then talking to founders or talking to people that would get you connected with other people that would potentially match you with the right job. So that is how I landed that. And I think networking is just really, really important, especially in early career. But yeah.
All right, awesome. So moving on to our next question, how can aspiring UX designers build a strong portfolio if they don't have much real-world experience? Ashley, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, definitely. I think Mark kind of touched on this earlier, but doing redesigns, so let's say like you haven't had a class or like formal experience to like walk you through that, something you can do on your own is like just take an app that you know, like it could be something that you use every day, it could be something you just notice and redesign it. So like that's something that a lot of people do if they haven't had that formal experience of like just to showcase that like they have skills in Figma. Um, but I think definitely taking classes, even if it's outside your major, like there are a lot of classes that I know like HTD has one like 318 was like a really popular one that people use for their portfolio, which is like a class that essentially walks you through this user-centered design process. Um, and then also like I guess through clubs like that also was like the at the time like when I was I guess like I also saw a lot of people I guess like join clubs to like do different projects like I don't I can't speak to like what's still out there, I guess, or like what's happening now because they're like seasonal. But I know like if you keep an eye out for it in the design community, like even being here is like a great start, but like just doing like little projects here and there. Um, like I know there's like one that you can like design for like small businesses. And that's even something you can do on your own is like try to find like small businesses if you wanted to do like some consulting work, even if it's like you reaching out and finding those opportunities. So there's definitely ways to design things on your own. It may be kind of difficult to do if you've never, I guess, had that formal experience. So I would say like taking a class is probably the easiest way because they'll just guide you through that process, which is nice. But they have it in a lot of different programs, like the design program, also HDE and Info. So just kind of looking out for that and trying to like apply into like a class if you're like a non-major. Um, yeah.
Awesome. Mark?
Yeah, honestly, I definitely want to echo what Ashley just said. And I guess what I'll add to that is like when you're like in classes doing projects, I think that's a great way to get experience, but really try and go through like the entire design process in depth. I think, for me early on, I was really focused on like, the way things look and the designs and the aesthetics, but what I learned is that, when you're presenting work to an interviewer or someone's asking you about your experience, they really care about the going through the entire process, including, like research and testing. So I'd say just kind of emphasize those, and then you'll make the most out of the experience you're able to get in those classes or side projects.
I was gonna go sleep at like 10.
Awesome. And then Jackie.
Yeah, so besides class and projects, I would also say hackathons. I know that UW, or in my experience, have had offered a lot of hackathon opportunities. I think some from Winfo, Dubs Tech. I don't know if that's still a thing, but yes, I would strongly recommend participating in hackathons because it does help um, not only help you network because there will be partnerships or sponsorships from companies, but also um, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but it helps you practice the whole design process in a really like sprint kind of like focus. So you have a really short amount of time to come up with a whole idea to put everything together from scratch. So echoing what Mark has just mentioned, it really helps, you practicing your UX skills. And so I would strongly recommend using hackathons as a way to help you build your portfolio on top of your school projects. So yeah.
Great. And then moving on to the third question, what key skills should recent graduates focus on developing to stand out in the competitive UX job market? Ashley, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is a good question. I feel like when it comes to recruiting, I think there's really heavy emphasis on visual design. I will say like a lot of at least like my classes in the HE program were very like a lot of methodology and a lot of design thinking and definitely a lot more like research based, which I think are all foundational and like really great to have. But I did feel like coming out of I think the program, I did feel like there was like a gap or bridge between like the technical skills in Figma that I needed to use on the job versus like what I practice in like school. Because I think in school also you do projects, but they don't take a lot of time to really focus on those hard skills of like designing efficiently and then also like making sure they're clean and pixel perfect. So I would say focusing on your Figma skills is like a huge thing, especially if you want to go into UX design, like specifically or product design. Just refining that, like doing workshops like these, is great. But I would say that's a pretty big gap because like when you are on the job, that is something that like speaks for itself is like your work and like your manager or like anyone that's even like recruiting can like easily pick that apart from your like portfolio, like they'll know kind of like what level designer you are. But yeah.
Great. Awesome. Mark?
Yeah, I agree with everything Ashley said. I think um yeah, definitely like your visual design skills, I think can help set you apart. There have even been like a few times when like I've heard from like my current boss or even other people saying like, oh, like we weren't gonna talk to you until we like saw your portfolio and we thought it looked good, so that's why we're talking to you. And so I think that's something that like originally I overlooked, but it can be very important. And something interesting that I've been hearing from like my boss and other like, bosses or CEOs is that they're really liking I guess hiring like recent grad for designer roles instead of like more experienced people. And I think it's they value like the different perspective we can have. And I'm not fully certain what that means, I think, since I am a recent grad, but I guess like I don't know, maybe we have like a different kind of hunger or drive to us, or maybe we're more up to date on like design trends, but I guess maybe that's something you could lean into to try and stand out. Um, Yeah, I think those are things I can think of right now.
I can go ahead and get started, but I can answer your question, Mark. So for designers that have been in the company for longer, usually we tend to get siloed, or like we t tend to dive deep into one specific area that we forget about newly trends, or we're too we're too concentrated that we forget about other perspectives. So that's why I think there is an answer for why companies would prefer hiring new fresh grads over experienced designers for certain areas. As for what key skills should recent graduates focus on developing, I think storytelling is definitely one of the most key skills that one should have. Yes, I agree that visual design is really important, but how you tell your um, really matters, because especially since if you're applying for jobs or opportunities, things like that, you share your portfolio with the recruiters. And I think I read somewhere that recruiters only spend about 10-15 seconds going through your portfolio. So how you walk through your cases, your stories is really important. How you section them is really important too. So not only is your design important, but how you go through your design process is also very important. How you structure it and make yourself stand out uh, is really important. And that is what I think is a key skill to have.
Awesome. All great points. All right, for question four, are there specific design tools or software that entry-level UX designers should prioritize? Ashley, go ahead.
Yeah. Um, I think like obviously like Figma is like the biggest one. I am hesitant to like I guess like name other tools because like personally like I stay in Figma like on my day to day and like that's pretty much where like all my work and like designs live. Um, I I guess like thinking outside of that, I know like there's been conversation as to like, does it help you or like would it make you more well-rounded if you knew like other types of like design tools? Like I know like there's like Adobe or like Sketch out there, or even like does it help if I know like front end, I guess, like coding or anything like that? I guess like to that point, I would say it really depends on your niche. Like if you are like prioritizing
To continue your skill sets in Figma. However, back when I was still at UW, when I was taking info classes, there are also other collaborative tools like Miro and Whimsical. I think that's what it's called. That is also pretty good for prototyping, not prototyping, but collaborating, having like these whiteboard sessions and things like that. And also some other things that I think are like a really good skill sets to have is to be able to understand project partners. So for example, when you're in the workforce, you'll be working with program product managers, and then you'll be working with engineers for the most part. So having some sort of coding understanding would definitely help you guys be able to better communicate and understand the tech constraints. Like, oh, I can't develop this button because of blah 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 blah. Yeah, you can completely avoid that if you already know, like, oh, this is not feasible to design, for like you're designing something that is impossible to implement. So having some sort of that software engineering context, just be aware of like knowing what you're doing. It will definitely help you a lot. Yeah, for design. That was mine. That would be my answer to this. Yeah.
Carrie, you're muted.
Oh, thank you. So the next question is, how do you see the UX field evolving, and what skills should recent grads start developing now to stay relevant in the future? Ashley, you can go ahead and start.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think, there's a whole conversation and topic of like AI and how does that like impact, like the day-to-day job, like, in the, long-term future, is that something that like makes design, like obsolete or like irreplaceable? And like after like I guess having the conversation and just like after working for a bit and seeing like I think there is an element to the creative process that like is brought by like the human aspect. So like even though I know in school, like I kind of said like the opposite earlier, like how they don't teach you a lot of Figma, but I do think that isn't to discount like the methodology and design thinking that you do learn there because I think there's a lot of places where again, like you just need to like be able to insert your own like judgment as like an advocate for like users. And that's something that I've been learning like in my role is like I really do like when I am like the owner of like a product, right? Of like something I'm designing, then like I kind of become the champion for the user amongst like product and tech. And so like I guess for skills, like having like a solid foundation of like design thinking is definitely like something that is less talked about, but like you should focus on like in addition to the visual skills because like it kind of ties to storytelling almost, but being able to advocate for your designs is huge. And so like, when you have something like AI that can kind of spit out wireframes like and generate that in like 2 seconds, then you want to be able to like speak as to like, I guess, um, why, like the why behind designs, if that makes sense. Um, I think it's one thing to make designs look pretty, but it's another to actually make sure they are user-centered. So, being able to justify design decisions using light thinking, I feel like is like a good skill to have.
Yeah, I agree with Ashley, and I think kind of the thing she mentioned about like AI. I feel like with a lot of products they're integrating AI, and at least how I view that from a UX point of view is I guess there are going to be a lot of users who react in different ways to that. I know like a lot of people might see AI and think, oh, this is a very cool product I'd want to use, but a lot might see, an AI product and, maybe not like it or even be scared of it or worry that it might take their job. And so I think if you're working for a company and you're working with a product that is integrating AI, it's really important to, do some user research and user testing and try and understand, the best way to implement it without, bothering people or making anyone upset. Um, yeah, another thing I think I've noticed in the UX field, at least in places I've worked, and even just across the industry, is like I think, a lot of design patterns have um kind of been like replicated across a bunch of products. So you'll start to see a lot of apps kind of look similar, which I think is a good thing for the most part. But in some of my experiences, I'll be designing something and looking at existing patterns, and my boss will say to me like, "Hey, this looks kind of boring. Like, let's do something interesting. Like, this is our chance to kind of disrupt the UI patterns that you see all over the place." And so I think if you can, kind of be able to be creative when it's needed. I think that can be very helpful and look around for inspiration, but don't use that to like lock you in a box of what you need to do. Like don't be afraid to go outside the box. I think a lot of times, people don't really think about that or companies don't think about that, but if you do it, I think it could be very cool and helpful.
Yeah, I agree. So I think AI is definitely a really big trend right now across all companies. And um, sorry, I'm still trying to understand the question itself. But there's a lot of you can apply UX in everything. So before even joining Amazon, uh, I didn't even know what Alexa was. So I didn't even have an Alexa. And then when I it wasn't until I joined that I learned that UX is not just designing UI like frames on Figma. It's also conversation design. You have to, like, for example, if you have an Alexa device at home, you can interact with it. There's a lot of UX elements involved, like the whole whatever it spits out at you. It's been through a lot of iterations to design the most perfect simplest, understandable response that meets your needs, and then it'll shut up, and then it'll let you do your thing. So there's a lot to UX, and don't I would suggest not to not only look at it's just AI, or you have to design apps or websites. It's more than just these platforms, these mediums, and there's a lot more to it. Uh, yeah, I think that's all I have for this right now. Oh, sorry, one more thing, and it echoes with the previous question too about tools. I think moving forward, I think with AI, UX designers are not only product designers, but more about like it's more holistic now. Yeah, yeah, you have a lot more at a hand that you can do that you can also provide more value with the help of like ChatGPT, AI stuff. So for example, you can be more of like a you can sometimes wear a hat, wear a user UX researcher hat, right? Like you can start conducting interviews yourself. So in big corporate companies, UX designer is only focused on designing interaction design. However, with that in mind, moving forward, you can potentially expand on your scope of work. So you can do more research stuff, data analytics, and things like that. So I think, um, like how others have already mentioned, don't be afraid of AI, but think about how AI can help you uh, moving forward and drive more productivity or just become a better UX designer. So yeah.
It
Awesome.
actually
Okay.
think
Oh, yeah, go
Wait, can
ahead,
I
Mark.
add one thing to that? I really like that point Jackie made. It made me think. I feel like I've seen a lot of like companies and products start moving away from like a phone screen or a screen as their main device. And like and kind of more like real world experiences. Like obviously there's like kind of like VR is one thing I think of, but even with this like big AI boom, I've seen a lot of like wearable products where it's kind of like I've seen some things where it's like a necklace or like a pin that you can wear and talk to, and so there's no screen. It's really like a very I don't know, like real world experience. And so I think, that might be something that's still kind of early. So if that's interesting, like you could lean into that. I took a class at UW. It was Design 483, and we had to design like a virtual reality product. And I think a very important skill and from that is just the how important prototyping is, and being able to like kind of showcase what you're thinking, what your designs are. Especially in like an unconventional thing like virtual reality, where like you're not just designing a screen in Figma. Um, yeah, that's thought I had.
Okay, awesome. So we'll do one more question and then we will open it up to the audience. So last question. Many recent grads struggle with imposter syndrome in their first jobs. How did you overcome this feeling if you experienced it?
Yeah, I can kind of go for this one first. First, I would say definitely this is a huge thing. And I feel like I didn't really experience it honestly until I started working. And like if I'm being frank, this is something that I think is like still working through just as I like continue getting bearings. But like what you learn is like especially when I came into my space, like it's super complex. Like I'm working on products that I had never even heard of. And they're also like all in the finance space. So my job is like jumping in with like zero context, like of like, a lot of these products that I'm hearing of and like things that have to do with like the accounting cycle and just like totally different industries than like I'm even used to. And so context setting was something that I struggled with that made me feel like there was a little bit of imposter syndrome there, but what you come to learn is that like nobody really fully knows either. Like even my manager and like my other peers, like that are working on my team, they still don't know a lot of like the context that's going on. And like that's something that I had to like I guess be comfortable in accepting is that I'm not going to be an expert matter. Like a lot of times when you're in school, like you are designing products or projects that like, you kind of create like a lot of them's like designing blue sky designs that you kind of like make. But when you're jumping on a product that you've never heard of, you have to be comfortable and not fully understanding like what you are designing, like or like the context, like obviously to an extent. And so like just knowing that like other people are still learning as well is like helpful to know. And then you start to like listen in on more conversations and as you kind of jump in and like really put yourself in the shoes. Like for me, like I was like constantly asking questions, documenting everything that I knew, like trying to keep sense to myself of like what I was confused about, what I wasn't. And like that helped me just slowly gain more context over time. And then you just begin to like be more comfortable as you get more pieces of the puzzle. So definitely like not being afraid to ask questions, reaching out early and like often, I think is good. And just like even sitting in on conversations and like listening helps. When I was an intern, I would listen to a lot of conversations that honestly were above me and were not relevant. And so I think I just got used to like sitting in but not listening, but like actually with the like sitting in with the intent of like trying to understand what's going on is a little different. So I think definitely like throwing yourself in the deep end is just like honestly the best way that you kind of have to do it sometimes. But yeah, that kind of helped me is just like finding like more clarity to what I was like working on.
Yeah, that was a really good answer. I feel like, yeah, I guess what I would add to that is like a lot of times what I would tell myself and like I was hesitant to speak up or like, hesitant to, correct someone or suggest a different approach. I would kind of just like tell myself like, oh, like they hired me for a reason. Like they hired me to speak up and this is what they want me to do. And so that kind of helped. And like I would kind of like give myself a little pep talk and just like say what was on my mind. And something else I found to be helpful is like if I ever was gonna suggest anything, um, kind of have like the research or the reasoning for why I was suggesting it. And I felt like one, that helped like convince my point, but two, if it didn't go that well and they didn't like it, at least like it felt like it didn't feel like they were like saying no to me, but more so to like my reasoning. Um, if that makes sense. But yeah, I'd say kind of just like throwing myself out there and telling myself that this is why they hired me just kind of helped me, do it.
Yeah, agree with what both Ashley and Mark has said, and I myself still struggle with imposter syndrome, even now, and like what Ashley said, like when I got thrown into this space, I didn't even know what was going on. I sometimes I still don't even know what is going on. So I think the key is, um, to don't be afraid to reach out. People actually appreciate it if you reach out to them and if you learn from them, or if you just like um just like ask questions that you don't know, because you won't find out until you ask the question. So I think that's really important. Like just try not to block yourself from ask being afraid to ask dumb questions, because there is no dumb question. If there is dumb question, they'll call out. Um but basically I think if you don't if you suffer from imposter syndrome and you don't reach out, it can potentially become a blocker for others too if you are in a workforce. Because if you're tasked something that you don't know and then you hesitate to reach out and then you don't deliver the right thing, it that turns out it's only gonna become like a cycle, is what I'm trying to say if it does that. So the best thing to do is to reach out and start. I think you should start changing your mindset into, oh, everyone is so much better than me, or I don't think I'm the right fit to do this, into more of a learning mindset. Like, oh, everyone's so great. Like I should learn this part from them. They're so good at this. I should ask them how they did it. They're so good at organizing their Figma files. Oh my God, I need to start taking notes. I still suffer from organizing my Figma files, but yes, yeah. So it's just like things like that. I think you should start approaching it with like a learning mindset over like oh, I suck type of mindset. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to skip the last question and now we're going to open it up to the audience. So if you guys have any questions for our lovely panelists, feel free to drop them in the chat or also unmute and ask. Jackie will be,
Yeah.
our Jackie will be reading out the questions in the chat.
Yeah, so I think Ashley and Mark already answered, but just so that everyone can get a chance to hear the question and the answer, what platform will you guys suggest to build your portfolio on, considering the final outcome and pricing? Ashley, did you want to start us off?
Yeah, I can. Um, I would say Framer, and honestly, like I'll pass this question off to Mark in like a second because like he's like the Framer expert, but like definitely would recommend that. I'm actually like in the process of redoing and like switching my whole portfolio. Like I think it's worth the revamp just because like it's a pretty easy platform to use. Like I think back in the day, like the most like cracked looking portfolios were like Webflow, but Webflow has like a really awful like barrier to entry. Like I think it's really hard to pick up as first time user. So framers like that, you can achieve like all those like cool animations and interactions, but just like the entry, the barrier to entry is like definitely like a lot less. So I would recommend it. And it's I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but I'm pretty sure it's like fairly cheap. Like you could get like a basic plan for like $5 a month. And it's like it should have the capabilities you need. And they have like templates and stuff you can look at too, but would recommend that.
Yeah, that was well said. Yeah, I also used Framer, and I think like I started off using Squarespace, but then I switched to Framer because it allows for like a lot more customization while still being pretty easy to learn and use. And something I really liked is like you can design something in Figma and then just import it straight to Framer. So like in the beginning, I did that. They also have like a bunch of templates you can use, which make it really easy. And I even feel like I was able to learn about web design while doing it because even though they have templates and it's easy to use, you still need to think about like responsive design and how will my portfolio shrink to a phone or grow when it's on a desktop. And like I think they're a somewhat young company, and so they're just kind of like pumping out new features like all the time. So it's pretty cool. Um, and I think they even have like a free plan you can use. So I would definitely check it out. This kind of feels like an ad for them, but yeah, I recommend them. I recommend it, Framer.
Yeah, I've never used Framer myself, but I did hear a lot of good things about Framer, so I would suggest checking it out. However, if you just want to get started and not start everything from like from scratch, I personally use Squarespace because I was lazy in creating my own portfolio, so I saw a lot of like already really beautiful templates that I could just use and plug and play and plug in everything I needed. Because to me, when I first started out, um, the advice I was given was like the whole recruiting advice that nobody nobody cares more about your portfolio than yourself. So that recruiters only spend about like maximum 3 minutes on your portfolio. So don't stress or kill yourself just trying to design a pretty like portfolio. So that was the advice I was given. So I just chose Squarespace because that had templates, and then they had all the functionalities that I needed, and then what I needed to do was just really just put all the case studies that I have done in the past, and then maybe make sure to structure it that it is skimmable in a sense that the recruiter would check it out and then say, "Oh, okay, yeah, you can move forward to the for in the next interview process." So yeah, but I would suggest Framer if you guys prefer customization. Yeah.
I think also just like echo what Jackie said, I think at least when I was like starting off, I was like scared to put out a portfolio that I didn't feel like was like 100% done, but I think that's not the right approach. Like I think, it's a lot better to put out one that you might not love than put out nothing at all. So I've even heard people say like they submitted like a PDF as their portfolio. So, don't let that stop you from applying to jobs. Um yeah, I think that's a big tip.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. A lot of Framer fans here. Next question from our audience is, where do you go to find UX research portfolio inspiration? Oh, and a link has been dropped in the chat if anyone wants to go check that out. But yeah, if you guys could speak to that one as well.
Yeah, I use that one as well. I think there's another one like Cofolios. I can find the link as well and drop it in. But um I also see I don't am not like as familiar with like a UX research portfolio, so it's hard to speak on that. But um yeah, I guess like I don't have any like specific niche one, but I think they do have like a variety of portfolios on these sites, so I can try to find a link.
Yeah, I agree. I think like that site or and other like portfolio showcase like websites are good for like the content and seeing good ways to like tell the story of a project. And then what I started doing for like the actual design and like aesthetics of my portfolio was like looking at just like cool like products or like apps or websites that I thought actually visually look good and then try and like use that as inspiration for the actual design of my portfolio. And so I think that's when it can be helpful to have a portfolio builder tool that gives you the flexibility to like design things the way you want. Um, yeah. So yeah, I think yeah, that's a good way to get like the visual identity of your portfolio.
Yeah, I agree. Like, not only like looking at what others have already created as a portfolio, but also having a mood board of all the websites that you think are pretty, that you want to get inspo from, that you want to build on top of. I think referencing, not stealing, referencing those patterns are like good to have. So yeah, having a mood board is definitely the way to go.
Perfect. Thank you all for sharing. Um, do you have any insights in preparing for UX interviews?
Yes, I can share this. So I will say that like during recruiting, like I feel like I go really in on like the preparation when it comes to like getting that like interview. For UX design interviews, you'll typically see like various forms. So like sometimes you might get like a portfolio review. So you'll walk through like a case study or like a whiteboarding session. So like I guess I could speak to both of those because those are more of like what um I guess I experienced outside of like the typical behavioral interview, but for definitely for the case study, like the portfolio, make a separate presentation. So try not like don't walk them through like your actual portfolio and like pull up the link in the case study. Like make a separate presentation and make it tailored to whatever company that you're interviewing for. What I like to do is make it super easy. So like I'll walk them through like a case study. And I had this like format that I used and I like would walk them through like, you know, my abbreviated version of whatever my case study was, bring out the findings and then summarize that. So what I would do is like look up like the core values from whatever company I was looking for. And usually they have like already a set of design principles that are public. That's like their values. Like Capital One had that, for example, right? And then I would have a list of findings from like the case study I was presenting, and then that would map to, you know, like each of the values. Like for example, you know, like I would present work from my previous internship, and one of the values at Capital One might have been like, you know, quickly and like rapidly like iterate or like you know, be human centered. And so like I would have a finding that kind of mapped to that, if that makes sense. So you make it really easy for them just to see like, okay, like these are the findings that you had, like these are your skills, and it's translating directly into the job that they're looking for. Um, and that's like a format and template that I used a lot, and feedback I've gotten in like from those interviews, I guess were like successful. So definitely recommend like just making it easy and explicit for like the interviewers. Um, and yeah, sorry, I like kind of talked a lot, so I like can pass it off there if anyone else wants to speak to like, I guess other parts of the interview.
Yeah, I would just say what's helped me a lot is um just like have maybe like 3 to 5 scenarios in your head from like work experience when you felt like you learned something or, scenarios that answer like kind of the typical questions, like a time you had a conflict, a time you had like stand up for, a design you believed in. Like if you can have those scenarios like just kind of in your head and be able to answer those, and like be able to kind of shape your answers to address the question they ask, I think that's very helpful. And something else that I found was helpful was like anytime I give a situation, really just emphasize at the end what I learned from it and, how I will, approach this similar challenge moving forward in the future. Um, I think that's a big thing. Like really talking about what you learned and, how moving forward you'll approach it differently and, maybe even how you could apply your learnings from that at the company you're interviewing for.
Yeah, I agree to those. And like how Ashley mentioned, it's just making sure that you do the company research first a lot on top of your own UX interview prep. So making sure that they're both aligned, right? Like if your skill sets matches the job description, you're more likely to get moved forward to the next round. If you're making the job easier for the recruiters or the interviewers, because you're literally explicitly saying what they want to hear. So if you do your prior research on those companies and then you know what their mission statement is, you know their values are, you know what their principles are, it helps you better position yourself with other UX designers that are also applying for their job. So I think Amazon specifically, Amazon is has like so many leadership principles, for example. So if you look at the principles and you should think about how you can apply your current skill sets or your experiences to those leadership principles, and that will make your both lives easier in terms of moving forward with the interview process. So yeah.
Perfect. And we have time for one last question super quickly. Um, what is the best way to stand out from other UX designers and get noticed by potential employers?
I would say like really your portfolio is like your living and breathing brand like of yourself. Like it is something that they look at quickly, but they'll get like a really good taste, like recruiters, like right off the bat, kind of like your visual skills. And it's it's a little shallow, I guess, but it is something that like you are judged on. And like I think Mark kind of shared an ex similar experience like this, like how they talked to him because his portfolio looked nice. I really do believe that when everyone's like resume looks the same, and especially if you're someone who may not have a lot of design experience, if you do have like a really nice looking portfolio, I think that will help you stand out the most. And like as someone who is recruiting, I think that's like the best that you can do. Because even if you do have a lot of experiences, like if your portfolio is not good, um, it will be hard to get visibility on it. And it's also speaks to like, again, like that going back to what Jackie was saying about storytelling, like you want to sell yourself as like someone who, does have the skills to like match whatever UX design role you're going for.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess I don't have much to say, but like a different kind of approach to questions, like not necessarily standing out, but um I guess the point I'm trying to make is like, I feel like a lot of people kind of apply to jobs in the same way, like, go to LinkedIn or, Handshake. But I think don't be afraid to use other avenues to find jobs. Like last year I went to like a virtual career fair at the UW, and I was kind of like I went into a thing like, oh, like a virtual career fair, like this is kind of weird. Like, is anything good gonna come out of this? And I ended up like talking to a company, interviewing with them, and I ended up getting a job from them too. So basically what I learned from that is like, you never know what avenue you could find a job or a cool company you want to work with, but I guess just be open to exploring like anything, anywhere you can like find a job opportunity.
Yeah, and not just UX itself. Try to find something that is adjacent to UX, or like what unique skill sets that you can bring that distinguishes you between other UX designers. So for example, like I mentioned, if you have some background knowledge in software engineering, that already makes you a lot more different from other UX designers because you understand technical feasibility. You understand how to work with engineers better than other UX designers are probably, or I guess I should say this is a lot of UX designers come from different backgrounds. Some come from graphic design, some come from, product, some come from communications too, maybe. What I'm trying to say is if you have more skill sets that can bring to the table that you can offer to the company, you should definitely highlight that, right? Like if you have experience in conducting research, you have experience in data visualization, you have experience in software engineering. These are all really nice to have um, bonuses, bonus skill sets on top of your UX skills. So you should definitely try to be able to highlight that during your interview and share it out with people or recruiters and interviews. So yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Ashley, Mark, and Jackie. Everyone appreciates it. And then we hope to see everyone who joined us today at our next meeting. Have a good rest of your day, y'all.